Valerie, thank you so much for joining us today. We had a couple of questions from the studio audience to help us understand a little bit more about what a care provider deals with when dealing with someone with Prader-Willi syndrome, also known as PWS. So we were wondering, what is the hardest thing about dealing with someone with PWS?
It's kind of difficult to pinpoint one thing because it really may vary depending on the caregiver's frame of mind at that time. PWS comes with a full package of challenges, some of which are the constant vigil of having to keep watch on food. For instance, you have to navigate locks everywhere in your own home. For example, if you would like to have a drink of milk, you may have to unlock and then relock your refrigerator every single time it opens. If you want to access your community, you might need to plan ahead and be aware of any opportunities for acquiring food. Like many stores offer samples like Costco, or community events that offer snacks afterwards or during the event. Other people and friends don't really understand and they'll offer food just being friendly. We are a society of eaters. They also have really unusual and repetitive behaviors people aren't often familiar with. For example, imagine having the exact same conversation every single day. Or being awoken in the middle of the night by alarms because they're beginning to wander around the house and they have no concept of time. Also, there are meltdowns where there's a total loss of emotion, where they yell and cry and scream or engage in destructive behaviors. So these often also occur more when the caregivers fail to keep their emotions out of the situation.
That's fascinating. That's something that as a researcher we don't always take into consideration. What is the most rewarding thing about dealing with someone with PWS?
That's a good question. I would say that he's very genuine in his appreciation. He has a very innocent and pure outlook on life, which helps us to keep perspective on priorities.
Oh, good. So, can you describe how you came to the decision to be his primary care provider?
Well, the agency that provided his care really didn't understand what Prader-Willi syndrome was, and they also didn't know how to train their caregivers to really understand what it meant. So whenever there was a problem, which is pretty much daily, they would come over to our house and have to take us over there. A couple of times he tried to take his own life and ended up in the hospital. This is our son. We love him and want the best for him. Becoming his provider seemed like the only option.
I see. It seems like even when you weren't his provider, it was that you were. And so, what do you think his future looks like?
Well, he's now 31 years old. This past spring, we located a facility that specialized in working with somebody with Prader-Willi. They help both our son and us as parents learn to have a greater understanding of the syndrome, from specific diet programs to behavior programs to appropriate medications. We learned that generally a person with PWS resides in a group home setting because they need constant supervision, like I talked about, in order for them to be successful. However, it's clear that he prefers to be with family, as a fear of not being with them was one of the factors in his attempts at suicide that I talked about earlier, so it's very important to him. He often states, "My family loves me and wants to take care of me. Someday my siblings will take care of me. When my parents get old, I will do my best to help them out too." So the PWS Institute really gave us renewed hope about that. This unusual syndrome has not been forgotten. There's research being done that helps improve his quality of life and also for caregivers that are dealing with this. I would also like to share a quote given at a training from the Montana State Disabilities Department, if you don't mind. This pertains to persons with disabilities regarding least restrictive environment. So basically, least restrictive environment is meant to imply as normal a life as possible within the framework of a given disability, not despite your disability. You will live as though you were normal. So with adherence to guidelines for persons with PWS, love and compassion for our son allows him to have a reason to live and a reason to look forward to the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.